G'day mates. So before the video starts, I just wanted to thank Lazy Masquerade for helping me out with this one. It's been great working with him on a couple of videos, and I hope in the future we can do it again. I'll provide a link below to his channel, and I really encourage you guys to go check out his stuff as he has a lot of talent and he's a really top bloke. I also contributed to his most recent video, so be on the lookout for that one, guys. But anyway, without further ado, let's begin.
Number 4. In 2014, after hearing all of the horror stories, I wanted to check the deep web out myself. In a way, I kind of expected nothing other than scam sites for assassins, people requesting CP, and some underground markets. However, I prepared myself for the worst and, frankly, I was more worried about getting in trouble with the authorities rather than having my mind bleached for the near future. Even after 2 to 3 hours of procrastination, nothing prepared me for what I saw. It was during the middle of the day when I began my search. Of course, there's no deep web Google or anything, but rather a wiki with a lot of links. The links are different than the links you may know of. These links have no way of knowing what lays behind them. Just numbers and a .onion at the end. Of course, unless previously defined and listed on the wiki page. It was boring at first. A lot of dead sites, more than expected eBay style markets for weapons, military grade mind you, various services, and of course a lot of drugs. I came across a chat room where I saw a darker side of people I never thought was possible. So many people that were mentally ill, threatening others, requesting CP. It was truly disgusting. Think of the people who walk down dark streets of a bad neighborhood, but with anything they desired at their fingertips. 2 hours later, I came across one site that ended my little adventure in the wastes of human consciousness. A cult site, perhaps, with little info other than an email address and some religious mumbo-jumbo. However, there was a video embedded in the site's homepage. Like a naive child, I clicked it without a care in the world. The video was shot on a crappy video camera. Perhaps it was shot in the early to mid-2000s. It was a man with a mask and a knife. As quickly as that scene showed up, another presented itself. He was cutting something in a similar fashion to a butcher. It was then and there I realized the body was bipedal and without fur. It was a human being. He was cutting the legs at the buttocks level. A new scene shows the decapitation of the head. Then another shot of the man with the mask, followed by a picture of a church with a weird symbol. This was a cult recruiting website. It was followed by more bodies being cut up and hung in ways more gruesome than you may expect. Shortly after, I turned my computer off, and I stayed away from it for quite some time. This was my first and last visit to the deep web. I have never contemplated going back since.
Number 3. This was back before Google. Web pages were, for the most part, still very basic HTML and JavaScript. Hardly anyone used CSS. Only discussion boards and some banking sites had anything approaching mature front-end, back-end combinations. This is a real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. I was browsing random blogs, GeoCity sites and the like, just going from link to link. Eventually I came upon an odd page. It appeared to be random thoughts from different people, but for the time it was very well designed. Eventually I came upon an odd page. It appeared to be random thoughts from different people, but for the time it was very well designed. The messages seemed to be cryptic in nature, like several people trying to pass secret notes. I started through the source, and hidden in the comments of a JavaScript were various IP addresses. I gathered all the IPs in a text file and began enumerating. Some were routers with banner messages I could telnet to, almost all at universities. The default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them, but I didn't poke around. A few of the IPs were web servers with little to nothing on them, mostly APAC on Linux or some BSD, at least one IIS server I can recall. I finally came up on a web server with a huge directory of HTML files and TIFF images, with a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. NSLOOKUP returned no reverse records for the IP. A visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be records a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both military and medical nature. As I browsed from a subdirectory back to the parent, at the top was a new HTML file named something like 1-hello there.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it, and in plain text was the message, "We see you." No quotes, all lowercase. About 15 seconds later, the server dropped.
Number 2. Back when I was a freshman in high school, I had a MySpace page. One evening I got a friend request from some hot chick. She messaged me, and after a little bit of talking, she suggests that we trade nudes. Being a stupid 14-year-old, I thought, fuck yeah, this is going to be awesome. So I take a few pics of myself, and she sends me some nudes of her own. Things are going great. Out of nowhere I get a message on AIM from someone I don't know, basically saying, "Hey, I have those naked pictures of you. If you don't talk to me, I'm going to send them to everyone on your friends list." I start freaking out. I have no idea what to do, so I just start talking to him. At first, he tried saying he was a guy from my high school, a senior. He demanded that I get on my computer every night at 9 PM and talk to him, or else he was going to show everyone my naked pictures. This goes on for a few weeks, and things start getting progressively worse. By now, I know he's not from my high school. He's an adult and a complete psycho. One night I was at a friend's house, and the only person at home was my sister. She calls me and says that some guy called the house and insisted on talking to me, and got very angry when she said that I wasn't home. A few nights later, I was not able to get on AIM until midnight, and the first thing that he messages me when I sign on is, "I've been sitting in front of your house, admiring your Winnie the Pooh flag, and trying to look into your bedroom window." I freaked the fuck out. My mum always puts up seasonal flags, and so we had some cheesy Winnie the Pooh Valentine's Day flag out on my front door. Up until this point, I hadn't told anyone about this guy. I was just hoping he'd go away. So I wake up my brother and tell him what's going on. He insists that we call the police, but I was convinced I could get him to stop bothering me, and the police weren't necessary. So he goes and wakes up my parents, and I tell them exactly what's been going on. My mum immediately freaks out, rightly so, and calls the police. The police come, and I talk to them for a little bit, show them some of the messages that he would send me, and they made a report of it. From that night on, I just completely ignored him, and accepted the fact that the world was going to see me naked. I got several messages over the next few months from girls who would randomly message me my pictures. I was super embarrassed and dreaded going to school. The guy would tell everyone that I sent the pictures to him and that I was gay, etc., etc. At that age, that sort of thing can really fuck with you. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, and all of this had blown over. I did a good job forgetting how this guy tormented me, and things were really going well for me. Until one night at a football game. I'm walking into the concession stand with a group of people, and a random man comes up to me and says, "Somebody wants to talk to you, under the bleachers." My heart goes into my chest, and I immediately say I don't want to talk to anyone. Keep in mind, this was almost 4 years after the incident, but it was always in the back of my mind that he would come looking for me one day, and I knew it was him. Even though I'd never met him, I could just tell by the way that he asked that it was him. Everyone asks me what that was about, and I give them a quick rundown on who I think that was. We all head back into the stands, and another friend of mine comes running up to me and says, "Hey, this weird guy is standing in the bathroom showing people naked pictures of you." We're sitting next to a teacher of mine who overhears this, and he immediately calls the police and runs over to the bathroom to try and catch the guy. The guy had already left, but I gave a description of him to the police, and some concerned parents saw what he was driving when he left. I didn't sleep at all for the next few days. I was absolutely terrified this guy would come to my house looking for me. I couldn't believe this fucking weirdo was still after me. But after a few months, nothing else happened, and I began to forget about him. At the end of school one afternoon in the spring of my senior year, I get called into the dean's office. There are several police officers and a detective. They tell me they've caught the guy that's been harassing me, and that he's been doing similar stuff to other kids at the school for quite some time. He'd been in jail before for sexual assault against a minor, and a laundry list of other crimes. The cops found literally gigabytes of child pornography on his computer, as well as tons of evidence of his obsession with me. After a lengthy trial, he's now locked up until 2037, and hopefully out of my life forever.
Number 1. To begin, I think I should explain to some readers the difference between the deep web and the dark web. The deep web is a place that is accessible online by the use of special web browsers such as Tor that contains less than legal things such as drugs, human trafficking and hitmen for hire. The dark web is pretty much everything that is no longer available by conventional means, such as military websites and other sites that have not been incorporated into the current internet architecture. With that in mind, I would like to convey to you all my story of my accidental journey into the unknown space known as the dark web. I'm a computer technician by profession. I work for a company that is contracted by local businesses and private consumers to set up internet connections, install software, and repair any sort of computer problems that may come up. So naturally, I get all kinds of crazy stories and problems that these people can come up with. I swear some of these people just don't know how to work a computer, even in this day and age. Anyway, one day I get a call from a local business complaining that their internet is acting up and that they must have a virus. So I shake my head thinking that someone must have unplugged a network cable or downloaded a Trojan horse accidentally. As soon as I arrive, the man who called me immediately spots me and starts going on and on about hackers and how much he hates Microsoft Windows and how many viruses it creates and all that nonsense that I usually receive when addressing business problems. He leads me to his computer and I pull out my laptop and sit down in front of it and begin to work. He tells me good luck and walks away to do whatever it is he does in his downtime. I open up the browser he uses, and to no surprise, it opens to a blank page. He doesn't even have a home page at this stage. So I try connecting to google.com, and there's a 404 error. Alright, well, I know that google.com definitely exists, so there's a problem with this internet connection. I open his network and sharing center to see if I can use the built-in troubleshooter to diagnose the problem. But I give myself a well-deserved facepalm when I see that he isn't connected to any network at all. So I search for networks and find a few wireless connections for him to connect to. They're all WEP, encrypted, and I'm almost positive that he doesn't know the key. So I break out my laptop and run a WEP cracking tool to get his computer up and running again. As I'm waiting for my tool to find the WEP key, another network suddenly shows up on my computer. This one unprotected with an SSID consisting of a random hexadecimal string. Now, I'm extremely bored waiting for this guy to return, so I decide to connect to it and take a little look around to see where this was coming from. I connect without problems and open up my toolkit of cracking tools to see if I can find the source for this connection. As I'm having fun, hacking away at this unprotected network, my computer freezes up. Albeit only for a second or two, but this doesn't happen much and it caught me by surprise. I shrugged it off as the poor internet speed and kept on going. A couple of minutes later, however, it happened again, and a few minutes after that, once again. each time getting longer and longer. Weird, I thought to myself. What's with this network? It was then that things started getting really interesting. After the long string of pauses, my screen flickered a little bit, and out of nowhere my browser opened by itself. Now I was worried that I had somehow infected my computer with some kind of malware by connecting to this network, and I proceeded to close the browser and began to disconnect from the network before anything worse could happen. But I couldn't disconnect. No matter how many times I clicked the little disconnect button, my computer didn't respond, despite everything else on my screen running fine. Shit, I thought to myself, this is going to be a long day. And just as I was about to hit the power button on my laptop to perform a hard reset, my browser opened again, this time with a little chat box opened. Hello? I stared at the screen for a couple of seconds, not quite knowing what was going on. I want to talk to you. Now, I heard about these AI programs that have all these program responses to simulate conversation with people, and I was not impressed. This was one nasty virus. You need to leave this network now. This is your last warning. Maybe an automated security program designed to keep hackers out. I'll have to admit, I was impressed with it. I had never seen anything like this before. I'm telling you one last time, leave now. I don't know what made me do it, but I responded to the program, or what? The next response scared me more than anything in this world ever has. The program began listing information about me, my name, address, telephone number, credit card information, my parents' names, their addresses. My heart sank in my chest and all the colour immediately left my face. I couldn't move. I just sat there, paralysed with fear. But what came next was even worse. Don't look at me like that. My webcam was on. You really shouldn't stare, H3Man4694. You might see something you regret. Suddenly, the most horrifying images you could ever imagine flashed on my screen. Images of disemboweled humans, human sacrifice, detached limbs, cannibals eating people, video clips of mass suicides and firing lines. My heart was racing, my body was shaking in utter fear of the images I was being shown. They seared into my brain. These were things that no one should ever see. I mustered the strength I had left and hit the power button on my computer and slammed it shut. I ran to the bathroom and threw up a couple of times. I was drenched in sweat. I could barely compose myself. It took me about 20 minutes to go back to my computer, and even then I had a hard time getting near it. I looked over at my client's computer and it was connected to the wireless network I was cracking earlier. It was working fine now. Just then, my client returned and thanked me for fixing his internet. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my laptop and left.